Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our 28th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. celebration at the University of Utah. It's worthy of applause because we're the longest running celebration in the state of Utah and the most comprehensive in the state of Utah as well. Let me begin by first thanking you all for being here. This is one of the highlights every year of our MLK event celebration. And I'll point out that there is a live feed also going out to the health sciences, given the importance of today's keynote speaker as well. So we're joined by several hundred other guests at the health sciences, throughout the health sciences. This program was kicked off last Saturday with a day of service sponsored by the Black Student Union and the Lowell Bennion Community Service Center, and continued on Monday with our annual Marade, which is a celebration of the legacy of Dr. King, and invited hundreds of faculty and students and community members for our third annual march this year, thanks to Dr. Jennifer Williams-Moloch, who helped initiate that here at the University of Utah. The day also included a rally, a very important rally that actually kicks off the Marade. And this year's keynote speaker was the Reverend Franz Davis, who's also a regent of the Utah State System for Higher Education on the Board of Regents. And as usual, he did a fantastic job energizing the group prior to our formal march up to the Kingsbury Hall, where we culminated that evening with a cultural celebration. The importance of today's lecture continues to be a significant event in the contributions, recognizing the contributions of Dr. King. We celebrate our annual keynote lecture today, which includes a very long legacy of scholars and public intellectuals who have been invited here to the University of Utah to shed some light on their own experiences with respect to the legacy left by Dr. King. We are very pleased today to have another outstanding scholar and public intellectual provide the keynote, and I will invite Dr. Loris Betts, President of the University of Utah, to introduce today's keynote speaker. Thank you again for coming.
Thank you, Octavio, and good afternoon, everybody. Today we celebrate the profound contribution of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., not just to the civil rights movement and as a champion for the advancement of all people, but as a champion of education and one who understood the power of learning as the catalyst to bringing about true change. Dr. King once said, "Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education." Well, it also happens to be a pretty good goal for the University of Utah, and I'm proud that the U can host this important event to honor Dr. King every year. I'm also pleased to introduce to you our keynote speaker, the university's own Senior Vice President for Health Sciences, Dr. Vivian Lee. Dr. Lee comes to the U with an impressive pedigree, having been educated at Harvard, Oxford, and Duke, and a background and preparation has put her at the center of medical research education and innovation on many fronts. She has served as the Vice Dean for Science, Chief Scientific Officer, and Senior Vice President at New York University. While there, she directed an ambitious research strategic plan, launched 6 new centers of excellence in translational and interdisciplinary research, strengthened NYU's administrative infrastructure and research facilities, and created extensive faculty development and training programs. She was also instrumental in creating a new venture capital fund for research at NYU, which has led the nation in licensing income for most of the past decade. Here at the University of Utah, in addition to her role as Senior Vice President for Health Sciences, Dr. Lee serves as Dean of the School of Medicine and CEO of University of Utah Healthcare. I'm convinced that her vast experience and expert vision for continuing the upward trajectory of the university's health sciences program will lead us to an even brighter future. In fact, I'm more than convinced. In her short time here, I've already seen action in that regard. So it's indeed a great pleasure for me to introduce to you Dr. Vivian Lee.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Loris, for your very kind introduction. You've led the health sciences and now the university in such a thoughtful and selfless way. You've brought us to new heights and you've helped us set our expectations even higher. So I thank you for your guidance and for your wisdom and for your friendship. Thank you also, Dr. Octavio Villapando, and the entire staff at the Office of Equity and Diversity, and to the organizing committee for inviting me to speak here today, and a special call out to Dr. Jennifer Moloch for your outstanding efforts together with the committee in putting together just a really remarkable week of celebrations, and as Octavio pointed out, for the 28th year, something really that we are very proud of here at the university, so thank you. And also I want to say thank you to Senior Vice President Dave Pershing. Where are you, Dave? For your being an unwavering supporter of diversity at the University of Utah for over 30 years now. So thank you. And thank you all as representatives of the university for welcoming me and my family to the university. I have been humbled and motivated, and I'm extraordinarily excited about this opportunity here. So we are here today to celebrate the achievements of a great African-American leader, an extraordinary leader of humanity, and really one of the great figures in world history, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. With his courage and tireless efforts, he helped us envision and then create an inclusive space in which we can all be ourselves, in which we can thrive and flourish. As Reverend Franz Davis said in his stirring keynote on Monday, each of us has our own story, and we need to share these stories. By bringing together all of the stories we have as individuals, as families, as religious and professional communities, as ethnic and immigrant groups, into one inclusive and diverse society, we will make this a much richer world in which to live, and we will collectively put forward the best solutions to some of the world's most challenging problems. Today, as I reflect on what diversity and inclusion mean to me, I thought I would share with you some of my stories. Some of them are very personal stories about, for example, what it was like to grow up as a Chinese American in Norman, Oklahoma. Some of them are from my professional path as a physician and a researcher to now healthcare administrator, and are about why I think diversity is so important to our success as educators, researchers, and healthcare providers. And some of them are stories that influence my role as a leader in this great university and are about why I'm convinced that diversity and inclusion must be shared core values across the university, and also why I believe they will be critical drivers of our success. Carol Moseley Braun put it so well when she said, "The appeal of diversity is its unlimited potential to tap human capacity." I love that. When I look out and I see all of you, I see unlimited human capacity. And so I look forward to sharing with you my thoughts today. Our role as a university to create an environment that welcomes broad perspectives, is open-minded and rejects stereotypes, feels a responsibility to value everyone, appreciates the differences between people and the challenges they may have overcome just to get here. And in the health sciences, I believe that high-quality healthcare should be accessible to all. I'm committed to keeping us moving forward, and as part of that commitment, I am eager to make my first executive appointment at the health sciences, which will be a full-time associate vice president for inclusion. And that individual and I will work together with the rest of the team at health sciences to keep us moving forward. So let me begin today now by telling you a little bit about the stories that have defined who I am. So my parents were born in China. They were born in the old China during the war, which eventually became part of the Second World War. My father spent many of his earliest years in caves, sheltering from bombs that were falling from the aircraft above. He became very sick as a child, and they thought that he would not survive. And so his mother, my grandmother, who was a very determined woman, she and my grandfather actually had ventured abroad and received graduate degrees in London before going back to China. She was a very determined woman. So she braved the war, and she set out on a walk for days and days and days, bringing my father along to get to the nearest major medical center that was safe. And by some miracle, my father survived. Our families were very fortunate. Both sets of my grandparents escaped China alive, although many of my great uncles and aunts did not. To make a long story short, my parents immigrated to the U.S. as graduate students. They came to Berkeley in the early 1960s with just a few dollars in their pockets. They settled eventually in Norman, Oklahoma, where they are still professors at the University of Oklahoma. And yes, I am a Sooner fan. I'm a Ute fan too, but I'm also a Sooner fan. When we moved to Norman, there were only a handful of Asians in town. One family, of course, ran the Chinese restaurant. Growing up in Norman, Oklahoma was on the whole a very positive experience for me. The people in Oklahoma are very friendly, they're down to earth, they're good, solid Midwesterners. I made some very good friends in school, including a couple of my best friends who came from big Mormon families. I have very fond memories of growing up in Norman. Back then, though, in Norman, the population was pretty homogeneous, and our family, we stuck out. And I'm not just talking about my bell bottoms or that perm my mom made me get. Although I have to say, I didn't think those helped. But we stuck out. And not surprisingly, my family experienced discrimination. So we'd sit an hour in a restaurant, and finally it would have dawned on us that we were just not getting served. Or, some people would make disparaging remarks in passing on the street, and so on. My parents' experiences as immigrants to this country was not unlike that of many others. The good far outweighed the bad. And they and I have felt blessed to have been so welcomed in this country overall. I believe that those of us fortunate enough to have been born here shouldn't forget that much of the prosperity that this great country has enjoyed has been because of the talent and the hard-working ethic and the remarkable resourcefulness of the generations of immigrants who came here with a dream. And I'll take, for example, the Mormon pioneers, many of whom were impoverished and struggling in their home countries, from Scotland, England, other parts of Europe. People like David Eccles, who was the son of a poor, blind woodworker from Scotland. Those families and their children saw great opportunities here out west, and they made this part of the country not only inhabitable, but a flourishing economy that we now all benefit from. And although Salt Lake City may not seem much like New York City, the statistics may surprise you. In fact, in Salt Lake City, last year in 2010, the majority of babies born were minorities, according to Professor Pam Perlich, who's a senior research economist in the Bureau of Economic and Business Research here at the U. And so clearly organizations that welcome people of all backgrounds, who embrace the energy, the hope, the vision for a bright future represented in each and every one of those babies, will benefit from the talents of those individuals. And we at the university must be one of those places. During this week, we are reminded about Martin Luther King Jr.'s life and the marches and the protests, the arrests, the beatings, and we appreciate that we have indeed come a long way. But we aren't there yet. We still experience biases, stereotypes, prejudices that threaten to hold us back from reaching our full potential. I was very fortunate to attend Oxford University on a Rhodes Scholarship. And when I received that scholarship, I wrote a letter to the chair of biomedical engineering to see if he would be willing to take me on as a graduate student. Sent him a letter, sent him a copy of my CV, and I received a very interesting response. Dear Vivian, you must be a very capable young man. So you can imagine the look on his face when I stepped through the door to greet him for the very first time. And speaking of that scholarship, when I was interviewed for it, I was actually asked, I thought, a very interesting question by the committee. I was asked this question: Vivian, growing up in Oklahoma, which was more difficult for you, being an Asian or being a girl? And let me now speak a little bit on the second part of that question. There are so many stories that any woman of any ethnicity, any race, any background can tell. And so I will just tell you one that happens to be tied to my Chinese heritage. The shared values of a culture are often positive, and they help to bind and hold a society together. And the Chinese have some very strong shared values. Most of them, I think, are positive. We respect our elders. We are taught to be thrifty. We value education. We're hardworking, and so on. Those are very strong, positive values. There is one strong Chinese value, which I think is really a prejudice, that is deeply ingrained as well, and that is the belief that boys are superior to girls. And this may surprise you. You know, in modern-day China, women appear very successful. They have full rights to education. They've done very well economically. But underlying this success is still a strong cultural bias against girls and a marked preference for boys. Now, how do I know this? Well, consider the reported ratios of boy-to-girl births. Naturally, because of the biology, there is a slightly higher rate of boys to girls. On average, you'd expect about 104 boys born for every 100 girls. Today in China, since the one-child policy was implemented, the ratio across the country is approximately 120 boys for every 100 girls. And there are some provinces in China where that ratio is as high as 130 boys to 130 girls. Prenatal ultrasound, which costs now about $12 in those villages, is making abortion a viable way to abort girls and try for a boy. This, what they call gendercide, isn't just limited to China. These skewed birth rates are also reported in India and throughout East Asia. Think about what these data say about a society's views and the impact of these values on the self-esteem of the girls in those societies. Well, one of the advantages of growing up in Norman, Oklahoma, as one of two sisters with pretty progressive parents and with very few other Asians around, is that I was completely sheltered from this aspect of Chinese culture. My parents never let on that anyone would possibly think that we were inferior. I certainly never heard from them that girls couldn't be good at science or math. And in fact, since both of my parents are scientists, we naturally gravitated towards those areas. And like many parents, my parents told us we could be successful at anything if we just tried and worked hard enough. These kinds of stereotypes and prejudices can be so damaging. And our challenge is to not allow them to become self-fulfilling. Reverend Davis said on Monday something that I'd like to repeat. He said, "We must be transformers and not conformers." I really love that line. We must be transformers and not conformers. We need to find mentors and role models to help get us there. Some of those role models will be individuals like teachers, professors, church leaders, maybe even physicians. Others will be people we admire from a distance or who we study in our history books. As a woman in science and in medicine, I have read about extraordinary individuals like Elizabeth Blackwell, the first female doctor in the U.S., or Marie Curie, the Polish scientist who won not one but 2 Nobel Prizes for her work in radioactivity. In 2009, I celebrated when 2 out of the 3 Nobel Prizes in medicine went to women, Elizabeth Blackburn and Carol Greider, for their work on telomeres and telomerase. I wonder how many of you know about other great scientists, African American scientists and inventors, for example. Many of you would know about George Washington Carver, who devoted his life to agricultural chemistry at Tuskegee Institute. Carver was the first to show farmers the value of crop rotation, how if you rotated cotton with plants like peanuts or sweet potatoes, you could get a much bigger cotton yield the next time around. And then, of course, that resulted in a massive production of peanuts and sweet potatoes, and so he then found, with his lab at Tuskegee, hundreds of new uses for each of these products. For example, his lab discovered in total about 325 different products that could be made from peanuts, ranging from instant coffee to printer's ink to shampoo to wood stains. What about the steroid cortisone? You may have that in your medicine cabinet today. That was synthesized by a black chemist, Percy Julian. You all know the phrase, the real McCoy? That's Elijah McCoy, born to fugitive slaves in Canada who escaped through Kentucky through the Underground Railroad. McCoy was a pioneer in the development of automatic lubrication in industrial and locomotive machinery. Garrett Morgan invented the gas mask that became the staple of safety equipment in fire departments, police departments, mining companies, and it was used to save many, many lives. Morgan also, interestingly, invented the traffic light. I bet you didn't know that. And he sold those rights to GE for a whopping $40,000, which was a lot of money in 1923. If you don't know much about black scientists, you should pick up a copy of Louis Haber's book. It's really excellent. It's full of wonderful stories about amazing role models. Like Morgan and McCoy, I started out as a scientist and as an engineer, and my research is focused on advancing magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI. And as much as I love MRI research, and I'm still doing it, in recent years I have become increasingly drawn towards the issues of healthcare that are facing our nation. And so now I'd like to share with you a few stories about health sciences at the University of Utah and about our mission to provide high-quality health care at low costs to all. I'd particularly like to emphasize how diversity and inclusion are critical to achieving these goals. The challenges facing healthcare in this country are front-page news almost daily. I really don't even need to repeat these statistics for you. We spend almost twice as much on healthcare as other developed nations, and yet our health statistics put us far below where we should be in numbers like infant mortality and life expectancy. Our people are nowhere nearly as healthy as they should be, and at the same time, the dollars that we spend on healthcare are proving to be a real drain on the economy. This is a national crisis. You may not be aware that Utah is recognized as a state that is at the leading edge of healthcare and healthcare reform. In 2006, the Kaiser Family Foundation found that Utah spent the lowest amount on healthcare per capita of any state in the nation. And despite spending the lowest amount of healthcare per capita of any state, we are among the healthiest in the country. And if you put those two together, high health, low cost, we are in a class of our own. No other state comes close. The quality of our health care in Utah is nationally recognized as well. Our own university hospital was ranked #1 in quality in 2010, compared against all academic medical centers. That's the likes of Johns Hopkins, Stanford, Mayo Clinic. The Intermountain Healthcare System, a major network of private hospitals and clinics in Utah and Idaho, is nationally recognized for their work in healthcare quality and in cost reduction. So here in Utah, by working together, we are well positioned to help solve our healthcare crisis. It's a huge challenge, it's an important responsibility, and it's also an incredible opportunity. And it's this opportunity that attracted me and my family to come to Utah. One of the most important and sometimes neglected aspects of healthcare reform is the issue of health disparities. And I'd like to talk about that a little bit now. We know that racial and ethnic minorities have lower rates of health insurance and access to health care. They also have higher rates of many of the most significant diseases. For example, African Americans are more likely to develop and die from cancer than any other ethnic group. African Americans, Hispanics, and Native Americans get diabetes at twice the rate of whites. Diabetes and obesity are major health issues for our entire country and for much of the world now. Because of my mother, some of my earliest research experiences were in studying diabetes in the Native Americans in Oklahoma. This may surprise you, but for the last 30 years, my mother, who is a rather petite Chinese woman, she's about 5 feet tall and about 100 pounds, she has been developing relationships with the leaders of many of the major Native American tribes in Oklahoma. She's an epidemiologist. She and her collaborators in the Dakotas and in Arizona have reported on the shocking rates of diabetes and cardiovascular disease in Native Americans and have documented the severe complications that affect these groups. As the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. said once, whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. The research by my mother and her colleagues gives us tools, almost the crystal ball, if you will, to predict what will happen if the current trends in obesity in the rest of the U.S. continue. The likely epidemic of diabetes and the complications that will ensue and the devastating effect they're going to have on our healthcare system and on our economy. Their studies, like the Strong Heart Study and the Multi-Center Diabetes in Native Americans study, have also helped to shine the spotlight on healthcare for Native Americans and have helped to bring more resources to the Indian health services to improve access to care. Here at the U, we have also been moving forward to educate our students about health disparities and to bring science and medicine opportunities to students in underserved areas. The School of Medicine's Office of Inclusion and Outreach, under the leadership of Dr. Evelyn Gopez, who's sitting here today, has been developing programs with clinics like the Indian Walk-In Center and educational outreach programs like the Edison Project in Scientific Literacy, where medical school students make presentations to 5th and 6th grade students at Edison Elementary School, where 90% of the student body falls below the poverty level and 73% come from underrepresented minorities. In the last couple of years, our medical students have totaled over 6,100 hours of community service, and their efforts have touched 4,457 students across the city and state. I think this is a great start, and I look forward to keeping these programs moving forward. I've talked a lot about why diversity and inclusion and caring for the underserved are core values for me personally, and now I'd like to turn to a discussion, a very practical discussion, about why diversity and inclusion are necessary core values for achieving the future that we at the University of Utah are striving for. And let me start with an example from an area I know well, which is scientific research. If you talk to any scientist, they will tell you that bringing together people of diverse backgrounds and abilities to tackle complex scientific problems is critical to success. This perspective is shared by all scientists. It's not a political viewpoint. It's really just common sense. My own laboratory, as I said, focused on MRI, includes engineers, physicists, mathematicians, computer scientists, statisticians, nephrologists, pathologists, surgeons, radiologists, economists, nurses, and technologists. Expertise and experience and those skills, these are components of, I think, one layer of the foundation of diversity. Another layer is the diversity of backgrounds and perspectives. Differences in backgrounds enable us to approach problems from completely different angles. We challenge assumptions of others because we don't share those assumptions. We prize the opposite of groupthink. My own research collaborators, they have roots in Algeria, Bulgaria, Poland, Russia, New Zealand, Australia, Korea, China, Pakistan, and of course America. Many of them have been educated in different systems and they have different world views. They enrich our working environment in countless ways and they challenge the way I think every day. What we've discovered in science is that the best way to learn, the best way to solve problems, to think creatively, is by surrounding ourselves not with people who are just like us, but with individuals who are different. I think the same can be said for leadership and leadership teams, and certainly the same can be said for advancing medicine. Let me give you an example in the field of personalized medicine. So what exactly does personalized medicine mean? Well, personalized medicine means that the one-size-fits-all approach to medicine is no longer good enough. It recognizes, because we're all genetically and biologically different, the kinds of diseases we're predisposed to are different, and the ways to treat us may also be different. So we all know some people may be predisposed to heart disease. Other people can eat 3 eggs a day and never have a blocked artery. Some people can take pain medications without any complications, and other people are at risk for addictions. Some people are prone to multiple cancers over their lifetime, and others live long lives cancer-free. Personalized medicine is based on understanding genetic differences between individuals using powerful scientific research tools, many of which were developed right here at the U by people like Mario Capecchi and many others. If we understand the genetic basis of a disease, we can tell people whether they are predisposed to getting disease and help prevent them from getting it. So, for example, we can screen for colon cancer with colonoscopy more frequently in patients with colon cancer genes, or routinely perform breast MRI in patients with the breast cancer genes. Or if people do get sick, we can determine in advance which treatments are more likely to work: surgery or chemotherapy, radiation, surgery or radiation, chemotherapy 1 or chemotherapy 2. We have long known that different ethnic groups suffer different kinds of diseases and respond to treatments differently, and our scientific advances are helping to explain why in a way that helps us customize care. One thing that I wanted to point out today is that there is one factor that is holding back personalized medicine, and that is a feeling sometimes of suspicion or distrust on the part of some that makes them unwilling to participate in research or clinical trials. Now, I recognize that some of these feelings may be justified based on past injustices, but I don't want the mistakes of the past to get in the way of the successes of the future. And I can assure you that the system we have now of protecting research subjects is very, very strong. And so I want to encourage each of you to be willing to participate yourself or your family and friends in research projects if you're asked, because you should appreciate just how important it is that everyone be represented in these studies. The conclusion that our research will be applicable, the conclusions of our research will be applicable to you only if people like you participate in research. So take hypertension, for example. We've long thought that there's got to be a genetic basis for hypertension. About a quarter of whites have hypertension, and almost double that number of blacks have hypertension. And yet, of all the genetic studies that were published early on, they were all conducted in whites of European descent. Only in the last couple of years have some studies begun to emerge of African Americans and hypertension and looking at the genetic basis. And they're really showing some interesting results. And interestingly, I think the first study that was published by a Nigerian American physician scientist here. In order for the medical community to develop better treatments for people of different backgrounds, individuals must take part in the research. And this is really just critical and also just common sense. I've emphasized that the core element of our strategy at the U must be diversity and inclusion, because we must leverage that human capital that Carol Moseley Brown refers to. And a great example is our ongoing effort in personalized medicine at the U. To develop our personalized medicine program, our leaders created an online forum for people from inside and outside the U to talk about what they thought personalized medicine should mean for them personally and for us here at the university. Our online forum had 412 registered users, and this forum then led to a day-and-a-half retreat which brought together face-to-face 277 people from all over the city, including the Utah Economic Development Corporation, Intermountain Health, the Veterans Affairs, and most of the colleges across this university. We had MDs, PhDs, RNs, JDs, MBAs, BAs, you name it. We had African Americans, Latinos, Asians, Middle Easterners, Caucasians, Native Americans. We had students, and we had retirees who came back to give us a hand. The excitement and the enthusiasm were energizing, and the ideas were absolutely amazing that came out of that retreat. We will be able to bring cutting-edge research to the patient's bedside, and we will deliver care in a truly personalized way. And we expect that personalization to apply to everyone, to people from a wide range of backgrounds, because we are engaging them in the design. We will create a personalized medicine program that will be second to none, and you will know our secret. that diversity and inclusion will be the secrets to our success. So I'll close by reflecting on the words of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. and the theme of our celebration this week. He said, "If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward." When I read these words and I hear these words, I personally can't help but think of my grandmother walking painfully and perhaps even at times crawling with her sick child through that very rough wartime Chinese terrain. And it is because of her struggles and her sacrifices and her determination that I can be here today. I, as you can imagine, feel a personal responsibility to make a difference and to do justice to her memory. And in the same way, together, we share a responsibility to realize the great possibilities that have been opened for us by the people who have gone before us. This week, and I hope throughout the year, we remember that it is because of leaders like the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., because of their courage, their honesty, their determination, their inspiration, they're willing to get down on their knees sometimes and crawl towards the future, that we are now running towards creating a very bright new future. And I am absolutely confident that working together, harnessing all of our energy, all of our creativity, all of our humanity, we can fly. I want to thank you very much for inviting me here today. Thank you.
We'll entertain questions, and we'd like people to come up to the mic and ask questions. And we'd like to limit it to one question per person so that we can get everyone to participate who wants to ask questions of our distinguished speaker.
Personalized medical treatment, because my focus is going to be on dual diagnosis, mental illness, combined with addiction. So my question to you would be, I'm coming from the liberal arts to the science-based area of study. What should I focus on, or what? Because I'm a newbie at this. And so
Well, that's a
science
great
background,
question.
but you've also got the health and policy, public policy side of things. The legislature wanting to cut Medicaid funding for mental illness, that's going to be an issue.
Well, thank you for your question. Personalized medicine, I think, needs people from all backgrounds and all experiences, so you definitely have something to add. And there is a very strong component of mental illness or mental well-being in the way we think about personalized medicine. I'd actually encourage you to check out our personalized medicine website, the same forum that I talk about, the Ideas Forum that we opened up in the summer. On that website, as I mentioned, over 400 users have logged on, and anybody can log on. You don't even have to be a part of the U. If you go to the Utah website, you can find the link to personalized medicine, and you can read about the comments and the thoughts that have been shared by the entire community about the different opportunities in personalized medicine here. And you will see a significant component of it in psychiatric diseases, as well as on the more social work side and actual healthcare delivery side to the patients. So I think you'll find something interesting there.
Thank you for sharing some of your stories with us today.
Thank you.
Very inspirational talk. I wanted to ask you a question about personalized medicine and some of the ways that we'll take advantage of new knowledge of our genetic makeup in treating and maybe even preventing diseases. And specifically, I'd like you to share some of your thoughts about how we can maintain a proper level of business incentives to generate that knowledge and to use it for things like genetic tests and personalized medicine, and yet maintain access to those inventions, not just for people who can afford it, but for all of the people who need it.
Okay, that's a great question. And it's a very important question because as we talk about personalized medicine and the genomic revolution, one of the issues that we're concerned about is, of course, the cost. We're really in a unique position here at the University of Utah because we have such a strong cadre of outstanding genetics researchers. We all know about Mario Capecchi and the Nobel Prize that he received, and he has inspired and attracted many, many other outstanding genetic researchers here. So we have a strong richness in terms of intellectual capital. We also have some other very unique resources, such as the Utah Population Database, which includes a lot of the genealogies. Those family trees are an incredible resource when you're studying genetic diseases. They're really just like a gold mine for us. Those, on the one hand, help us discover the genetic basis of disease and have insights in genetics. What I think is really unique here and an enormous opportunity is the fact that we have ARUP. This, for those of you who don't know, it's a pathology lab. It runs the test like when you go and get your blood drawn for your hemoglobin or for your cholesterol. ARUP is one of those companies that runs those tests. It has about 15% of the national market share. And what's unique about the relationship between our genetics research and ARUP is that ARUP gives us the opportunity to take those genetic discoveries, which are discovered in research labs, and directly translate it to a commercial lab that can be accessed by patients all over the country and doctors all over the country. So it gives us the opportunity to translate the discoveries right into clinical application. And of course, we at the U, because ARUP is owned by us, a lot of the revenues there can come back and feed the research effort. So it creates a more self-sustaining model for that kind of research and really advancing it here. In terms of how we're going to make those kind of genetic tests affordable for everyone, I think that's a question that we're all thinking about. One ray of light or optimism, a basis for optimism, is the fact that the genetic tests have just become so quickly inexpensive. You know, the technology is advancing so quickly that the idea of sequencing the genome for under $1,000, which people thought was absolutely insane 10 years ago, is now really going to be possible. There's no question it's going to be possible. So as the technology is allowed to advance, I think we're going to be able to find that it will become more likely to be more affordable than we ever thought before.
With all the advances that are currently being made in the genetic sequencing and stuff, how do we educate scientists that are in the hard sciences so that we understand sort of the package, that it's not only genetics, but it's lifestyle issues as well? So how do we get doctors, for instance, educated and understanding how to talk to their patients about lifestyle issues?
That's a great question. Whenever we talk about genetics, we also want to always remember that it's not just about genetics. So when you look at identical twins, for example, you know, both twins don't always get the same diseases, and that's because of differences in environment and then differences in lifestyle, of course, as well. That theme came up loud and clear in our personalized medicine retreat because we had so many voices from outside of, you know, the standard sort of healthcare system. We had a lot of people talking about preventive medicine, about genetic counseling, about the need to focus on preventive medicine. One unique resource that we have here in health sciences is our College of Health. The College of Health has, among many other programs, a strong emphasis on preventive medicine. And we really need to hear those voices loud and clear because typically in the healthcare system we're focused on treating, right? Which is unfortunately too late in many cases. And so we really want to get out there and concentrate on prevention. One of the challenges, of course, in prevention is that our current healthcare system doesn't pay for prevention, generally speaking. So the other thing that we really need to think about doing is to be very strong voices for articulating the need to emphasize prevention and lifestyle counseling and all things that go with that, and to make those really valued. And we need to show that those investments are cost effective and that they're good for our economy, and so our payment structures can start to incorporate those. That's going to be very important. Thank you for the question.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lee. You are just amazing. We appreciate you sharing about personalizing medicine, but really also about sharing your stories and how those stories impacted your life, and the impact legacies like Dr. King and others that you shared impacted who you are, and how you use that to impact the people that work with you and for you. And so we thank you so much for being our keynote speaker. We also have obviously just a small token of our appreciation. So if I can get it out.
Doesn't look that
It's in a big,
small to me.
it's in a big. But, okay, so I have to use these now, sorry. But we understand that you have been interested in learning, getting a little bit of a collection from Utah artists. And so we found a piece that we'd like to present to you. This is by, I'm going to let you hold that for a second so I can make sure I get the information, but it's by a Utah artist by the name of Cynthia Oliver. And she is a graduate of the University of Utah with a bachelor's degree in fine arts. And that's the last one like that. We don't even know if there's any more. So it is one of those one-of-a-kinds. And so because you're one of a kind, and we just thank you so much for all that you've done. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's give her another round of applause. Again, we want to thank all of you for joining us this afternoon, and those of you who were able to join us for the other events that we have had, our rally and parade and all of those activities in terms of living and continuing to keep the dream alive for the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and all of those others who stood before us and whose shoulders on whom we stand. And so we thank you for that. We do have one other two others, that happen before the week is over, and I want to make sure you're aware of those. On this evening, right here in this same space, will be our presentation by People Productions, and it is the play for color girls who have considered suicide when the rainbow was enough. And if you've never had that opportunity to see that production, I encourage you to come back out this evening. It is here and it is free. You can't get to see a play or a production at no cost to you. And so we want to encourage you to come out and join us there. And then tomorrow afternoon, in collaboration with the Hinckley Institute of Politics, is a panel discussion with some of Utah's first, particularly in the law profession, some of our first judges of color in the University of Utah, an opportunity that you won't want to miss. And so please join us at Orson Spencer Hall next door at the Hinckley Institute of Politics about 12:15 tomorrow. Again, thank you so much. Thank you again to Dr. Lee and to the work that you're doing in health sciences and all over the valley. And for those of you who are, again, making sure that you keep moving forward. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful afternoon.